Hello, everyone. So today I would like to address a question about, different spiritual actions, different occult practices that people pursue. Also about kriyas, about the space of consciousness. So most of the people in this day and age are very oriented towards the external action. So when I spoke in one of the shorts and some videos that we're living in the age of demonic spirituality, the word demonic is misinterpreted and by and large misunderstood by most of the people because they believe that demonic is something negative from a fairy tale. Demonic is a mode of consciousness that is constantly or uncontrollably going into the projection. It's kind of the process of division and multiplication, which is uncontrollable. That's why there is another side which is trying to keep it all together. And so there is balance within the creation, because the creation cannot divide and multiply and go into the dive into the matter uncontrollably and eternally. That's why there are cycles. The cycle of devolution and evolution. The cycle of devolution is the cycle when consciousness fragments and disperses, and the cycle of evolution is when consciousness is going more into an absorbed and concealed way. And this is how we understand it. So when we speak about the age of demonic spirituality, we, in other words, speak about the age of spirituality of action, where our consciousness is perpetually exists in this mode of creation, dispersion, fragmentation, and gliding along the surface within the projected reality without understanding the essence or the root of its existence. So it also sees the body as its sort of the actual existence or the existential point, when the existential point or the root exists on a subtle dimension, which is our consciousness, which manifests further through our emotions, intellectual, mental being, and only then appears as a physical manifestation. So when we want to understand what actually spirituality is, we need to kind of take a more detached look when we see that spiritual being is not about spiritual actions or the validations of our physical existence, but it's more so, it's more about the understanding of your subtle existence, kind of restoration or returning to the root. And when you perceive that space of consciousness without all the other lower or fragmented spaces of self, in a kind of more untarnished, undisturbed sense, you experience the ultimate reality of the self or the conscious space, which remains in stillness. And when you are aware and become aware of it and acknowledge it, you may say that you've awakened to this realization of the ultimate space, of this ultimate reality. The human words always fail because it's the direct experience, and that space is perceived on a physical level as a deep bodily relaxation, stillness, bliss, awareness. If one of these is missing, something is off. So we are speaking about absorbed state of consciousness. When consciousness is in a dispersed and active mode or the projected mode, it looks for action or the way it can exhaust or, release its energy. It doesn't mean that we have to abstain from one mode and only pursue the other. We have to be aware of these both modes so that we can actually evolve further as consciousness, which holds on to its ultimate space beyond any modes. Because these are both actions, whether the action of dispersion or the action of going back to the concealed state or to the ultimate state, these are all movements. Once you established in the stillness, you are able to understand spirituality at its core, at its depth. And then you will be able to see all the other levels and spaces of human existence, which is multidimensional existence. You will see emotional waves, mental waves. You will be able to tap to this pool of creative being, the pool of knowledge, the pool of this and the pool of that. But this is all relevant. All these occult sciences, pieces of knowledge, actions are relevant only when you've become a master of your own space of consciousness. You've restored your authentic, healthy, spiritual identity with clear, energetic boundaries. These boundaries are high frequency of vibration, which does not allow unnecessary waves into it. The space remains untarnished, free from any fluctuations. Then, when you need, and if you need, you may understand or learn or cultivate other spiritual arts of lower nature, which includes some type of action. But before that, you have to become a master of being, meaning you have to understand the fluctuation of the being and the reasons for these fluctuations. These reasons have been shaping throughout the down cycle. These reasons or the roots are the residue, the corruption of the down cycle, which has manifested as karma, meaning this physical body, that has also the subtle residue, the emotional and mental residue within the energetic structure. And so when people ask me, do I have to do all these kriyas? Do I have to perform this Tai Chi, Qigong, these, that? These arts are not from this era. These arts are relevant when you understand stillness. Qigong, any other art, occult art, you may say, hidden, the art of the subtle dimensions. When you want to project something, reflect something, learn how to manipulate creation. All of these will and can become, or can and will become traps for the unrefined consciousness. When consciousness can be carried away, can be lost to the projection, can be disturbed by the waves it cannot control. And how to control the waves without being able to establish yourself in this stillness and maintain the stillness within. If you cannot observe the fluctuation of the human collective existence, you will always be dragged into some pool of waves, or someone will try to disturb you, or someone will try to harness your energy mentally or emotionally, whichever way. It's all the creative energy. If you cannot observe through stillness and master your own space, all these arts become but the dead end spiritual traps for the unrefined consciousness, for the consciousness that can not master its own space beyond human existence, beyond the man-made reality that constantly drains you and drags you into the projected mode. And yet you can't blame the reality. It is just but natural phenomenon within the creation. All you can do is focus within and embrace the being. The being doesn't mean complete cessation or end of action or non-doing. It actually is a yoga, or the union between action and inaction, where you operate from that stillness and being. Your actions come from there, but they are conscious actions. They are not compulsions, obsessions, or waves that you can't control that push you into the physical movement. Because all the physical movements, first of all, arise on the space of consciousness. They are the movements within consciousness. If one's consciousness cannot remain in stillness, embrace stillness, and understand that its pure state is free from emotional waves, free from mental waves, free from any waves, it's a pure bliss of awareness and being. And if one cannot embrace and master and establish or root oneself in it, one does not understand what they are actually doing spiritually, because their doing is leading them to painful existence, to suffering, the self-imposed suffering, because they simply cannot control this compulsion to act, to learn something new, to excite themselves once again, even in the name of spirituality. If one cannot control the addictive, obsessive mode of existence, so in other words, the projected compulsion, the compulsion of consciousness to project and copulate with the projected reality, and also act, one cannot heal. The projected obsessive mode, addictive mode, is the mode of delusion. Illusion is, spiritual illusion means delusion. Even if you are functional in this world, you are okay. Spiritually speaking, you are unhealed, unrefined, and delusional. And if you can't embrace it, your consciousness, your unrefined consciousness will keep on pushing you into this projected mode. Your unrefined consciousness will not be able to pursue within yourself the path of refinement. And the path of refinement is not a path of action, it's a path of observation. It's the path of embracing stillness. It's the path of understanding the waves and restraining these waves by choosing not to act. When you observe compulsive behaviors, the waves that arise within you and try to push your body into all kinds of nonsensical action, delusional action, even towards self-harm, all you should do is to restrain yourself, no matter how uncomfortable it is, and observe the waves, even if your body starts moving. That's what they did from the start in psychiatry. They would restrain the body. So one has to gain that autonomy and control over one's own body to restrain oneself and see that once one experiences all these waves, or somebody's maybe impositions, a lot of people are afflicted in an occult way, karmically, tangled with other people's spaces, emotions and thoughts. So they're afflicted. They may become victim of someone else's imposition. If they cannot observe this imposition, these waves that arise suddenly on their space of consciousness, they should never attempt learning spiritual arts or sciences, because they become dangerous for these kind of individuals. If such unhealed individuals go into drug abuse, stimulation of their overstimulation of their nervous system, they cannot understand true natural spirituality, because they most likely will end up in a psychiatric ward, delusional, because drugs, plants overstimulate your nervous system. Sugar, caffeine, and other drugs of this reality overstimulate your nervous system, which means intensely and uncontrollably, they bring up all this trauma, all the residue, not step by step, but intensely, unexpectedly, thus causing psychotic episode, thus pushing one to act in an impulsive, obsessive way. Because of this overstimulation of nervous system, one gains undesirable access to the collective residue, to the karmic collective residue, starts hearing voices, see visions, different clusters of energy, and gets into delusional modes, scared, because one should not attempt to go into any spiritual arts and sciences out of curiosity, because it may lead to mental delusion, emotional imbalance, because one's trauma is not refined and healed. That's why we have to spend so much time observing ourselves, understanding the root causes of our imbalance, of our addictive, compulsive, obsessive personalities. We have to understand our shadows. We have to dissolve these shadows before we get curious about spiritual arts. And again, this curiosity is driven by the lack of power, the lack of confidence, the lack of understanding, the ignorance of the self, of the limited self. And in this day and age, everyone is mostly affected by this ignorance and delusion. And that thus spirituality is understood as the phenomenon of some sort of physical and mental or emotional action, visualization, projection, and all of this stuff. If you want to understand true spirituality, you are to embrace the space of stillness. There is no other way. You have to awaken first. And to awaken is very rare. Because even when if you happen to experience stillness and you acknowledged it for the ultimate, for the blissful, for the actual higher being, your undercurrents, your inner vibrations, your unrefined self will pull you again and again into the projected mode. That's why we say there is a spiritual journey, a spiritual path, because the path itself is basically like your inability to establish yourself in one point and act from that being. And that's why there is a journey, because you experience absorption, you come out, and again, you're in the projected mode. Again, you're in an absorption, again, in the projected mode. And through this samadhi or absorbed state, you observe all the other residue, the waves, the fluctuation of the limited self, the corrupt self. So that's why it appears to be like a journey, like some kind of a process in time, when in fact, it is just consciousness itself purging every moment its corruption, manifesting it through the projected reality and drawing your attention, attracting your attention to these experiences, these people who invoke these emotions and corrupt waves or karmic residue. So that's how you work. That's why it's called spiritual work. once you established in that stillness and being, you've laid the foundation. You haven't yet stepped onto the actual path of evolution. You only laid the foundation where you've understood that you can exist in the limited mode and there are waves, and that limited mode is the mode of fluctuation. And then there is a being that is always there. And now you establish yourself in that being and you address the fluctuation consciously through that being. In that sense, you exist in yoga of action and non-action, in that unified field where your body acts, but it acts out of that space of stillness. Then you understand all these sciences like Qigong, Tai Chi, and other occult or spiritual arts as the way to understand movements, direct energies from within, without doing much with your physical body, without moving your physical body much. Because all the actual work is done subtly. Masters don't make movements. They operate subtly. And yet nothing is undone, right? All the work is done because there is clarity. When there is clarity, there is direct focus. And the execution. The energy is not wasted. The energy is directed in a proper way, proportionately to the need, or to the need for this action to bring a certain result. If we cannot embrace stillness and establish ourselves, and it may take decades, we are but fools playing with the fire. And I hope this video brought you clarity and answered your questions. Thank you very much.